listening to Finding My Own Weird, where we'll follow yours truly on a journey to discover my own authentic weird self. I'm your host, Christine Lassiter. Joining me will be amazing guests who found their own formula and are living and thriving as their own wonderfully weird selves. So hold on tight, it's about to get weird. I was a painfully shy young person. All the way up through junior high, I walked the halls of school with my head down, hoping just to be invisible. While picking classes for high school, I, for reasons unknown, decided to take theater. At the time, I don't even think it occurred to me that I'd actually have to be on stage in front of everyone, and being invisible would not be an option. My freshman year, we did The Crucible. I was just one of several background girls in the play, lots of fake chatter and such. Then one day, my director pulled me out of the background and said, "I want to give you a few lines, and your character will have a name. She'll be called Sarah." Well, I was terrified, but I was also a little bit excited. Something happened in that moment, and that Pandora's box was opened. I continued in theater throughout high school and even into college. I think prior to theater, I was just so insecure because I had no confidence. I was chubby, poor, and just felt kind of plain. I didn't want to draw attention to myself because people would be even more aware of this. The weird thing is, the times I felt most confident on stage was when I was made up to be the most unattractive. We did Royal Gambit, and I was Anna of Cleves, Henry VIII's ugly wife. That deformed prosthetic nose was not flattering at all. I played a rock star whose crack pipe blew up in my face in a terrible Say No to Drugs play. I know, it was awful, but funny. But my face was covered in burns. It was really horrific. I can see the appeal to dress up as something outlandish, extreme, or weird. Even now, I have insecurities in my day-to-day life, but when you're making an effort to be seen and people see that wild and weird character, it just lights them up inside. It makes you interesting and fun and cool. It gives other people permission to be a little bit more weird themselves. Our next guests take that to the nth degree. They use their vibrant, bold, and weird look to make room for others to feel comfortable being their true, authentic selves. And it works. From people they meet on the streets, their charity work, and beyond, they are serving those who need to be seen and loved. Welcome, Sister Donna and Sister Inda Beginning.
Hi, and welcome to Finding My Own Weird. This one is going to be a little bit different this time because I have two guests today, and that means two wonderful stories or lots of mistakes. We'll see along the way, but that's okay because it's going to be fun no matter what. I've got Sister Inda, and I've got Sister Donna, and they are part of the Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence, and they are completely fabulous. Oh my God. We are going to talk about their journey to the fabulousness that they are today. So let's start out with Sister Donna. Let's kind of start out. Where did you grow up?
I grew up in a small town in Utah called Payson. It's about an hour south of Salt Lake. It's kind of interesting whenever I say that. People say, "Oh yeah, I've been to Utah and I drove right through," because a lot of times they're on their way to some other location. But I actually, the town that I grew up in was right on the freeway. So a lot of times it was fairly easy to get to Salt Lake or to other parts, but it was still there was only 12,000 people, I think, when I was first born. So,
oh my goodness.
Tiny town, very Mormon, very religious.
Right.
Not the best place to realize that you were different in any way, especially not gay. So, yeah, it was a safe place, I would say. There were some good things about it. It was also very difficult when I realized at 7 years old that I was gay.
So you knew at 7?
I did.
What was that discovery like?
It was terrifying. I remember realizing what the difference was that I had felt. And my mom, we were all just kind of hanging out. It was a Saturday afternoon. And we were sitting there watching TV, and my mom said, "Oh, I'm going to go take out the garbage." And so I knew that she would be alone outside And so I went and I stood around the corner from the house where the garbage cans were. And she came out and I said, I was bawling. I was terrified. I didn't know, but I knew that I had to say something. And I just said, I'm gay. And I was struggling through the tears, and God bless her. I look back on it now and realize she was only 27 years old at the time. And I just, I don't think she knew what to do with it. And so we kind of had a conversation, and she said, well, maybe when you get older, I think she thought when I went through puberty and started dating and high school and you'd grow out of it. And, I think she maybe thought that I didn't know what I was saying.
Because in a small town in that time,
absolutely,
there was probably not a lot of talk about, sexuality. They didn't show a lot of it on TV. I mean, Three's Company and stuff like that. Like Jack Tripper was.
Like it hot.
Yeah.
Right. Well, yeah, especially not alternate sexuality. There was a lot of straight sexuality for sure. But I think the reason I was so terrified is because everything I had learned about it had come through jokes, where the LGBT person was always the butt of the joke, and how horrible it must be to be LGBT, the negative talk that you'd catch from your uncle or.
Right.
And so when I figured out that that's what I was, that was the only context I had. And it was scary for a long time. And that one conversation with my mom was the only time we talked about it until 20 years later, when I finally came out and said, okay,
it didn't wear off. It's still there.
Well, yeah. And for 20 years, I was praying, and I was, going to church, and I was doing everything I could possibly do to get rid of it, and tried so hard for years and years and years to push it away. And to, I went out with girls, and my best friend and I, who is also a big old homo, we both took girls to prom together, and, we were both just trying anything we could. And yeah, finally, 20 years later, he had actually come out. He went on a mission for the Mormon Church. And within about a month or 2 months after him coming home, he came out because he was done with it. And it took me another 4 years or so. But there was one day where another of my friends wanted me to help her set up a dating website profile because she had just come out. And I was sitting there helping her, and I just thought, you know what? There's no reason for me not to come out. I've tried everything else I could think of. And so I just said, okay, well, I'm gay too. And it was a good month or 2 month process to come out to my family. But once I did, I felt so solidly myself. I had sort of burned off all of the guilt and the shame, because it just, it's like, I have tried everything I possibly can. And if God's still going to judge me, or I'm still going to hell, or, then that's just going to be how it is. And there's the third possibility that, several possibilities, but it's like, maybe there's not an afterlife. Maybe the Mormons don't know what they're talking about. And the afterlife is actually the next class that we go through, the next learning opportunity. And so I just thought, you know what, I'm just going to live my life and try to be the best person I can. And that's how it's going to be.
Well, let's go to you, sister.
It's amazing how many things link up or near each other. From both our stories, I lived in it was a city that felt like a small town outside of Roanoke, in Virginia. And so still dealing with a lot of people just in your business all the time.
Right.
And having to constantly fend that off. And from East Texas, you might commiserate a bit with that.
A little bit.
It's like, if you have nothing good to say, just come sit right by me and we'll give you
bless your heart.
Bless her heart. Absolutely. And so I was getting schooled in all of that. Same thing, hearing a lot of derogatory things said about queer people and taking it at face value because I have nothing else to
compare it to.
Or no understanding it. For the longest time, I was being called gay from, I think, since I started ever since I was socialized into school. Because I was singing Broadway musicals
Right.
instead of nursery rhymes.
We've definitely seen those kids when we're like, yeah, that
Like Hello Dolly versus
Yeah.
McDonald.
that little sweet
McDonald,
boy's going to be a gay
that's
boy when he
different.
grows up. Yeah.
I have stories from my mom where she would take me to Walmart and I would just either I was shrieking uncontrollably, or singing Broadway show tunes, and people were just sort of in this. That was even more rural. That was in Bluefield, Virginia.
Okay.
In this Walmart, just hearing this kid mimic Barbara Streisand in a flowing sequin gown, that's different. So
Right.
it was never something that I was able to totally hide, or never felt like I even could hide. It just felt
So when they were calling you those names, was it hurtful, or were you just like, well, that's who I am?
it was
Or
baffling. It was completely confusing. I didn't understand what they were talking about as far as sexual attraction too. I was people would be talking oh, you have these girlfriends, those little girlfriends,
Right.
all around you, and I'm they're my friends. They're
yeah,
girls.
they're friends.
And I love them dearly. I have a lot of great platonic relationships around me. Yeah.
Mhm.
But I never, in my mind, I was not operating with any sort of sexual intent, and
Right.
it just hadn't clicked. And then when it finally did,
You were 7 when it clicked.
no,
That's pretty
no.
young.
Some people do, true.
Right.
But when it finally did, I finally was able to watch Rent.
Right.
That was the turning moment. And I saw what gay was. And I was like, oh, that's what they keep saying.
That's
you're
who I
gay,
am.
You're so gay. Yes, I am that. Oh, I am so confused up until that moment. So, that was the real turning point where I was able to be okay, well, now what do we do with this? How do we
Right.
figure this out? I also had a very strong lesbian in my life at the time. And we were very much thick as thieves, just
If you're gay together, you stay together,
that's the
kind
world,
of.
absolutely.
Lesbians have been taking care of gay men for
A long time.
decades.
Far too long. Stand on the shoulders of giants. But that those connections meant so much to me, because I realized how murky the water was, so to speak.
Right.
It was hard to navigate on your own in those situations. So
There was a good solid 2 weeks after I came out where my really
The
good
first time or
friend-
the second time?
well, yeah, the second time.
Okay.
As an adult, where my friend who had gone on a mission and this lesbian friend were the only two people in the world that knew. And I cannot tell you the freedom that I felt. I would call her and say, let's go for a ride. Let's go to the store. I don't care what we're doing. Let's go somewhere where we can talk, because that freedom to be myself 100% was so glorious.
Like a relief.
Oh my God. The weight that had come off my shoulders it's having somebody that knows you or understands you or even just accepts you is so important.
Did your mom know that you were praying about trying to not be gay? Did she have any idea that you were still struggling so hard with that?
I don't. We honestly did not talk about it again for 20 years. And so I think there were probably awarenesses, her and my father both, after I came out and actually sort of forced some of the conversations. It was
Right.
interesting to hear my sister-in-law say, oh yeah, I remember one time when Dad said, I wish he'd just tell us if he was gay or not. And so they knew.
So they knew.
And there were conversations
You weren't
happening.
singing Broadway musicals in a Walmart.
Oh,
No.
it was Celine Dion for
Okay.
me.
There we go.
I remember we used to do this thing in my family where whenever we'd drive somewhere, each person got a turn to pick the music. And I just remember thinking, oh, I really like that Celine Dion song that was popular at the time. I can't remember which one it was now. But I remember this hesitation with my dad, and I couldn't figure out why. Why doesn't he like this music? It's great.
Yeah.
And now looking back on it, obviously it was sort of the same thing. Ooh, Broadway.
You don't know why.
Right.
You don't necessarily know why, but you know that you're not supposed to.
Now, we were talking earlier, but your parents were like musical directors and stuff. So
So I had like an opposite. That's a big divergence.
Yeah,
from
yeah.
my parents. But it's honestly, it worked out the same way because they were more familiar with that
Right.
path, as they called it. And weirdly enough, my father actually came out after I came out.
Oh, so your father is gay also.
Yes.
Okay. Did you have any idea?
Well, after the marathons of reruns of Designing Women and Golden Girls, I'm
Delta
not
Bird.
kidding, I'm not
Oh my
kidding.
goodness.
I heard it all from Delta Bird before anybody else ever involved. It should have been obvious. He
Right.
showed me the bird cage at
Oh, he was
age 7 or
trying.
something. He
He
was just
trying.
there was some education that was there. But no, largely he was very much in the closet. He was married to my mother. But was also a theater person. So it was sort of we know about that lifestyle.
It's interesting because I was in theater. There's a lot of theater people. There's a lot of weird in theater, which I could, but definitely there is a lot of gay in theater as well.
It felt
Oh yeah.
the safest place to be.
My theater director, I would have swore up and down that he was gay. He had a lovely wife, which obviously doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
And he, as far as I know, he never came out. He passed away several years ago, but I'm like, he just might be, he definitely, he was flamboyant. He was very effeminate, and he was a theater teacher, which doesn't automatically make you gay, but it definitely had that feel of, this doesn't come off.
And yet, that is the same person was the first to tell me you can be, and you don't also have to be that gay. He's telling us from his perspective, my dad.
Your dad?
And
He thought you were too gay, too flamboyant.
he definitely was clocking some tendencies. For drag and
Right.
wanting to dress up in all the costumes. Yeah. I was running around in a tutu most of my life when we were doing dress up as a kid.
So it was not a surprise to your
It was
parents
not,
at all.
yeah.
They didn't go. You
But
didn't
it's
come out and they
funny,
go, really? They were like, yeah,
Yeah, they had me. But it's funny. Mom used to show that picture all the time with me in that tutu.
Yeah.
And it was right around puberty that she stopped showing. And there's something, there's something wrong.
Right.
There's something about that.
Yeah, it was all cute until it might be real.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. The entertainment value is acceptable. A lot of people are in drama because they can be themselves and it can be entertaining. But as soon as the viewers don't want to really know,
Right.
they don't want to know your real story. They want to be entertained. And as soon as they're not entertained anymore, they feel gross or, internalized homophobia like your father.
Very much so.
Then it's not okay anymore.
It's funny because as you're saying that, I think about people of color in that same regard as, racist people can watch people of color entertain.
Sports stars as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's as
Just
long as you're
sports
entertaining me,
singer,
you're fine. Right.
I don't want you living next door to me. I don't want you,
And
whatever.
You don't get it both ways.
That fear, it's a fear, and I don't understand the fear. I know that drag queens have really been hit hard, doing storytelling events and stuff like that, and they've been really attacked for that kind of stuff in certain areas. It's just horrific. You would let somebody dress up as, a dinosaur and come in and tell a story, but a male in a dress, oh, heaven forbid, that's not natural.
Yeah, there's actually, just today, there was a really good post on Facebook that said drag has been entertaining you for years, and it has, Some Like It Hot with Marilyn Monroe and Jack Lemmon. And
I can go back and look at all that stuff.
Tu Wong Fu.
Oh,
it's
funny.
Bugs Bunny.
Bugs Bunny for kids
Forever.
Hmm?
Forever. Why has Bugs Bunny not been canceled yet?
So as long as it's entertaining and
It's okay.
controlled,
Well, as long as
okay.
it's depersonalized, as long as it's no longer about the personhood, it's about just consuming
That's a good point.
Yeah, it will never make sense to me because like drag queens telling story time, they're telling children's stories or even stories about acceptance and love and stuff like that. They're not talking about porn or their sexual preferences or anything. They're talking to children about children things and just doing so in a really colorful way.
Right.
Which makes children pay attention.
Well, yeah, and this fear that talking about LGBT things, even if it's LGBT children, is going to make children LGBT. It's like, I prayed for 20 years to be made straight.
Right.
And I grew up in a straight town. I grew up, consuming straight media because there wasn't as much LGBT content.
You didn't have a gay father.
I did, right. And I did not know any other gay person.
You still didn't come out straight.
Exactly. So it's like this fear that people have that, you're going to turn my kid gay. It's like, sweetie, for a long time, I wished that there was something that could turn me straight because there's this idea that straight is better. Straight is the default, heterosexual makes life easier. And for a long time, I battled my own internal homophobia around thinking, if I could have just been straight, then I could have just, I wouldn't have had to struggle with all of this, and I could have just gotten married and had kids and settled down in Utah, and I would have been
married with kids in Utah.
Exactly.
Telling your gay son to just not be that gay.
Yeah.
To just stop lying.
Yeah, could be quite so gay.
Yeah.
So when you were 7 and you were feeling this, did anybody in your school make comments to you? I mean, they did to you.
Yes,
like,
constantly.
Yeah. Did they make any comments to you?
Yeah, because when you said that about people telling you were gay, I really tried to think back, was there ever a time where somebody said something like that to me? And I don't ever remember there being, also I was a fairly heavy child. And so I think that was what people focused on.
They pick and choose their cruelty.
Yeah. Well, that was the quickest, easiest. You can't tell 100% certain that somebody's gay by looking at them, but you can tell that they're fat.
Right.
You can tell that they're not good at kickball or baseball or whatever.
Right.
And so that was definitely what people focused on. And I kind of kept to myself. So I didn't really have as many interactions. I would rather read a book on the side than play with the other kids. And so, yeah, it's interesting to hear people telling you you're gay and using that against you. Cause at
the end of the day, it didn't bother me because it wasn't something, again, I could conceptualize, but also I didn't care about that either.
Right.
Like I'd be friends with the gay kid in a heartbeat.
Yeah.
Obviously I was with my friend in high school, but like I was, that queerness resonated with me to the point, I've even had my gender identity journey reflect that, where I've been attracted to transphobia circles in school and everything, and would be excited to fight for their gender expression without realizing that also applied.
Right.
Without realizing like that's the reason you've got this spark in you about it. It's like there's something else that you're trying to express. So, I think that when they try to hurl those insults at you, it all depends on how you come to terms with it too.
Yeah, well, I know
the fat
that
stuff was much more.
Oh, I know.
Much more limiting
I felt
than
flooded there too. Man, I know.
Just to drop that bottom.
Yes.
But it has to do with like bodies and how they fit into the norm that we prescribe for people.
Well, and as I was thinking about it, I think because I was aware I was gay at such a young age, I was better able to hide it. I was able to say, I shouldn't sing show tunes in public, or, and so there was less of a chance for somebody else to figure it out because I was always so hyper on guard. But with the, being a bigger kid, there's no way to hide that.
Yeah.
You just,
It just is. I remember we had boy in our class who, he wore a little bit of foundation. I mean, and that's it. Nothing else. And he was a little effeminate.
Just to even things out.
I mean, we all need to just even things out. Right. And I remember her senior year, they voted him as prom queen, but not in a loving, accepting way.
I was just
It was in a this was 1992, East Texas. It was in a very cruel, very hurtful way. And I'm friends with him on Facebook. And, you know, he's talked a little bit about his struggles and stuff. And, you know, I'll reach out and tell him, you know, that I love him and, you know, so sorry that he had to go through that. And when I mention anything, he always comments about how kind I was. And it's interesting because I don't remember one way or another how I was with him. I wasn't mean to anybody because I was a poor fat kid. Who am I going to be mean to? But we don't know what a kind word, what somebody not teasing. I don't remember doing anything out of my way. I mean, I'm sure it was nice to him, but I don't remember going out of my way to do anything special. But when you're balancing that out against cruelty, I can imagine that feels like love. That feels like support. That feels so much more.
Study after study has shown that you know, the suicide rates amongst LGBT people are higher just across the board.
Skyrocket.
But they take a dramatic nosedive when there's familial support, when they have somebody in their life who's willing to affirm their identity, their gender identity, you know, they're willing to just be with them and, you know, love them, but also, you know, accept them. And like you said, it can feel so much more than what it is. You may not remember saying a thing.
Right.
And they're looking at it like a lifeline because everything else that they're getting is just attacks and vitriol. And so, yeah, and that's what I tell the junior members in the sisters. You may not ever know the ripples that you send out. You may not know how people see you or you brighten their day. Sometimes we get people, we had a girl at Pride a couple of years ago. We were in the parade marching along and this person runs out of the crowd and grabs, I can't remember who it was, grabs a sister crying and just said, "Thank you so much. I saw you last year at Pride and you gave me a hug and a blessing." And it's just like, you never know how you're affecting people, even just with things that, you know, you may not even remember yourself.
Right. I mean, and it's powerful. It makes me wish that I did know, you know, or that I understood the impact. I wish I had known what that impact could be for him then, and that I would have done more. But, you know, I mean, but in 1982, we didn't even talk about that stuff, except for, you know, you'd hear the cruel jokes and stuff like that, but there wasn't signs on houses and schools, you know, that says you're safe here, you're welcome here. I mean, there wasn't any of that. Actually, I never saw any of that until we moved here 5.5 years ago.
Wow.
I never saw the signs of all the people that are welcome here and all, you know, I mean, that inclusiveness, which I know Portland has its share of issues, you know, when it comes to being inclusive. But I know that there is an effort to try, and they are working on it, you know, and there's so many people here that want people to feel included and welcome and loved and supported.
Right.
And I think that goes a long way. It's an uphill battle, but I think that if enough people humanize the people that they're afraid of, you know, whether that be people of color, whether that be immigrants, whether that be LGBTQ, decked out, full drag, you know.
Just stay curious about the people around.
Well, and, you know, you guys are so vivid, for lack of a better word.
It's a great word.
It's a great word. Y'all are vivid. And I think that is welcoming, because when you are so out there, I think that people, I mean, obviously there's going to be haters no matter what, but I think that people know that if you're so out there that they maybe can ask a few more questions. Their curiosity, they can be curious. I think a lot of people just have questions.
Absolutely.
They have questions, I talked to you guys about, I'd love to be done up in drag. I don't know if that's PC, but I'd love that because I just think the whole concept of the transformation, would just be amazing.
Yeah. Well, and this is a tool for sure. Like you said, people have questions. People see it and go, what is that? Or sometimes they go, what the fuck?
Right.
And turn around and go the other way.
Right.
But that's another thing. Both Inda and I have been the mistress of novices throughout our journeys, which is the person, the sister in the house that brings in new members, that helps to train them and initiate them through the process, which is about a year. If anybody's interested, anybody can be a sister. But yeah, the makeup, the drag, the glitter, being bigger than life is a tool that we can use because it allows us to walk into a room and say things and do things that, if I walked in just in regular day clothes and walked up to a table and said, hey, who's getting laid tonight? Who needs a condom?
Right.
They'd go, who the fuck are you? Yeah. And why are you asking us if we're getting laid? That's weird.
Yeah.
But
that's what you assume will happen.
Well, what I'm saying is, the point is,
tried.
I will have you try it first. But
you're right.
It is definitely a way that we can interact with the community, which also, turn that around, allows them or invites them to interact with us. And you're right, it can be questions. It can be people that just need somebody to talk to. I've had somebody come up and need a hug because they just found out they were HIV positive.
Right.
I've had a woman who was a third grade teacher who, and this story always makes me a little emotional. She had a box in her classroom where her students could submit questions anonymously. And she said one day she got a slip of paper that said, I'm gay. Is that okay?
Oh.
And that, that goes back to third grade. That's right around 7 or 8 years old.
Yeah.
And she, her response was absolutely, that is okay. You were okay. And it was anonymous. So obviously she didn't necessarily know who it was.
Right.
But if I hadn't been in face, I probably would never have had that conversation because people don't feel as comfortable as quickly without the willingness for us to be so open and big and vulnerable, because this can be very vulnerable to go out in public like this.
I can imagine, yeah.
Well, growing up where I grew up, this would be like putting a target on your back.
Right. Well, that's why I would be in East Texas. Like I said, just a tiniest bit of foundation, which he didn't even look like he was trying to dress up. It maybe was just, maybe bad complexion or something was trying to cover, but just the ridicule, it's just, and like you said, you're not going to ask your gay waiter, those personal questions because that seems odd, but you dressed the way you are, that does open a door.
It starts a conversation for sure, but it also allows other people to feel completely secure how they present themselves. If we can put clown makeup on, put the glitter on, do, fun things with fashion.
We always say we are going to be the weirdest thing in the room so that everybody else has space to be exactly what they want to be too. We'll make the space as big as we possibly can so there's tons of space for everybody.
And I love that. As I'm going on my journey, I always feel like, if I do that one little thing, or people got to look at me and go, you're too old, or you're too big, or you're, or what are you thinking? Or, that's weird. And to be in rooms with, really weird, really outlandish, really amazing and wonderful, it doesn't make me feel like, if I wanted to do this interview in a unicorn costume, I could definitely do that. And it would be no big deal.
Yes, please.
I dressed up as a unicorn, not in like the blow up costume, but like I put it together. It was a beautiful, colorful tutu, and I had the long wig and this whole white bodysuit. And
how'd you feel?
I felt amazing.
Describe that.
I used to work in Multnomah Village, and I was over the Halloween event there, and the kids would come through. And so I was all over the place because I was taking care of the whole event, and kids were stopping me and they wanted pictures with me.
Oh.
And I mean, I was done up. My makeup was just off the hook. I mean, it was like a lot, but it did it. I mean, I felt spectacular, you know, and to know that I could do that on a Tuesday if I wanted to. It doesn't have to be Halloween, you know, and it doesn't always have to be a full costume. That it can be, you know, making some daring choices in your wardrobe or your makeup or your hair. Things I've never been comfortable doing.
Well, I think we learned a lot about that over the pandemic, where everybody's working from home. You suddenly get, you know, you're free to explore all these options.
Right.
And go to work in a caftan or go to work wearing leggings for pants. Like, maybe you just never tried it. Maybe that's why you were so upset about people wearing it.
Right.
Like, you just couldn't get in on the trend. Like,
you and I, we were talking about the equipment that we have here, the Adobe equipment. You two seem to have a professional job.
We do. Yes.
We do human job work. Yeah.
Okay. Right. You know, and it's funny, you know, because we're putting boxes in the corporate world, which is just ridiculous. And I'm fighting that. I've decided, you know, said I'm a mortgage broker. I'm going to be a mortgage broker who might have colored hair and who has lots of tattoos and all of those things, because it doesn't change who I am.
Yeah. And I think, you know, I said after I finally came out the second time, I feel like I burned away a lot of that hesitation, and it's still there, but I promised myself that if anybody asked about my life, about who I was, about who I was dating, whatever it was, I was going to tell the truth.
Right.
And so there have actually been times at work where we actually showed up to the office together like this and gave a presentation on gender presentation and
gender affirmation in the workplace. Yeah,
exactly.
Just like how do you navigate that in a
Right.
workplace setting?
Right.
Versus like everything online is maybe confusing or
Right.
daunting to jump into at first.
Well, you know, even when you want to be supportive and everything, if you don't have good information,
Exactly.
we have a trans mortgage broker that works for our company, and he's done training with us too. You know, because there's so many more people who are using they, them.
Yep.
There are, you know, they are going by non-binary. So, I mean, we're a, you know, one of our owners is gay. I mean, and we have, probably half of our mortgage brokers are gay, you know, so we're a very friendly, open, community there. But, you know, even some of the gay people didn't even know some of the details as far as the proper stuff. And we want that education. We all want that education.
Absolutely.
Because we want to make sure that we're treating our clients in the manner that's respectful for them.
Well, and yeah, we were talking on the way over here, actually, that line between self protection and being yourself, you know, and a lot of times, you know, I've been able to rely on my privilege as a cis white man,
Right.
and come out and say, look, I'm a sister, I dress in drag, here's a picture, and not worry so much about the reaction because I'm going to be okay.
Yeah.
Even from people at the office, even from people in public, I'm going to be okay. And that helps push the education, the boundary, even the questions sometimes. If it makes people uncomfortable, hopefully they're questioning that. And not everybody can do that. Trans people especially get so much more pushback and so much more abuse just for being themselves. And so it does become more and more important for people to educate themselves around those issues. Even LGBT people, you know, it becomes so much more important in our own community to educate ourselves. Talk to your gay friends, talk to your lesbian friends, whatever it is, and not necessarily put that work on the trans person or on the identity that you don't understand. They're just trying to live their life.
Right.
And so, it's great to hear that education is happening. And I love any chance people get to have those conversations in a safe way and not feel guilty or dumb or, because people have questions for sure.
Right.
And sometimes, it's the right place to ask the questions and the right people. And sometimes it's like, maybe go read a book on your own and figure some things out.
And that's a challenge. I mean, and that's a challenge that dealing with issues that happen with, again, you go back to, people of color and immigrants. And the same thing is, you want to be educated. You also want to respect the person, the people, and not put that on them. And it's a challenge. But it means that you have to be willing to put in the work.
Right. And that's part of what is so important about us, our vow to habitually manifest, which is part of our actual vows. We want to be out there in the community representing that, safe space to ask for knowledge. Maybe that right place is at a bar with a sister in the corner, just give me, what you know about trans folk and why, how can I engage? How can I get involved? And that could be very well be the right place. And I think that's what drew me to the sister work too, was serving as that public servant to help educate other folks, ask questions with them too. I don't know the answer to that question. Let's go find out the right resource. Let's go look for
being a safe guide,
just to even raise the question.
Well, sometimes, like I said, you don't know the answer. And that means that there are more people who don't know the answer.
There's an expert too, though, out there that can help you.
Yeah.
And now a word from your sponsor, me. Is it weird that I'm my own sponsor? Well, sure, but I'll certainly grow my sponsors along the way. I really love doing this podcast. It's the most fun I've had in such a long time. But I also really love my grown-up day job. Right now, I'm working with a client who's moving from my home state to Portland. They're selling their home in Texas and making the move across the country. They were working through several homes and getting quotes from each one until they found the perfect house. They got into contract on a Friday, and we got our conditional approval in one day. The appraisal was ordered and back in 24 hours. Now, I'm going to stop right now and say that is not normal to get an appraisal back that quickly. Normally, it's at least a week or longer. But I took the time up front to gather everything I could think of that we might need when I submitted the loan. And this meant that we only had 2 standard conditions: title documents and the settlement statement for the sale of their home. They are making this huge move to a city and a state that they've never even been to, buying a house they haven't even seen in person, and they're putting a tremendous amount of trust in their realtor and myself. It's so important to me that I take as much stress off of them as possible. Every client is different and every loan has its own process, but the one true consistent is the time, energy, and effort that I'll put into it and make sure it's as smooth as possible. If you're looking for a mortgage in Oregon or Washington, you can email me at Christine@tworiversmtg.com. That's CHRISTINE at TWORIVERSMTG.com, NMLS 2248608. And if you want to be a sponsor for Finding My Own Weird, reach out to me as well. And now back to your program.
So let's talk a little bit about the sisterhood. There's drag, which is when people think of drag, they think of RuPaul's drag. They think of, dressing.
Lady Bunny.
Those kind of things. But the sisterhood is a little bit different in a lot of ways. So tell me, what is the sisterhood? What is Sisters of Perpetual Indulgence? Let's talk a little bit about what that is.
The sort of elevator pitch that we give, San Francisco, 1979.
Pivotal.
There were, Easter Sunday, there were 3 or 4 guys who had moved from Iowa, who had some actual nuns' habits from a convent there. They had borrowed them, I think.
So they weren't even a costume. They were
it was
legit.
It was legit. And I think the story was that they were going to do a production of Sound of Music, but that was maybe just a story.
To make
Right. So they had these nuns habits.
So that's how they got them? Is that what you're saying? That's how they got them? Because they said, okay,
Right.
okay.
So they were out Easter weekend. They just put them on as sort of a funny, we'll go out as nuns on Easter weekend,
Sure.
and realized that there were people that were really reacting to this sort of fuckery, religious, it was like, oh, here's a gay person as a nun. And, nuns in general are not thought of as very nice sometimes.
Right.
And can be very harsh or
Mhm.
judgmental. And also they do good work. So it's sort of a weird place. And they realized that a lot of people were really responding to this idea of you can still have an authority figure or somebody to talk to within our own community.
Mhm.
Well, our own community even has a visible spiritual person.
Right.
Period.
Right.
Because at that time,
Yeah.
no religion was
Mhm.
picking up the banner of
Right.
LGBT rights for anybody.
Right.
This was huge. I mean, it was a complete contrast to, the Castro thought,
Yeah.
bright
Oh.
colors.
Oh, I've
glistening
seen.
skin. Yeah,
I've seen the thong in Castro.
vibes, yeah. So, I mean, this was, and people were really responding like, oh, I suddenly see I have this need for confession, or I suddenly need a blessing.
Right.
A
And
spiritual feeling that,
Mhm.
everybody sort of has access to or needs around.
Mhm.
So yeah, they got together. I think within 6 or 8 months, they had formed the sisterhood.
I think within the area.
And it just kind of snowballed from there. The story goes that one of them was a sex worker at the time and
Mhm.
started wearing the white face as sort of a guise, or a cover so that his clients may not know who he was and he could
Mhm.
still be out and about. But it's kind of interesting. The second house in the world, we are worldwide. Second house was actually in Sydney, Australia.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it was one of the nuns who moved from San Francisco in 1981 or 2. And they, at the time, were not doing the lightness, responding to our
It's
spirituality.
very, very interesting.
So, yeah, it was just interesting because at the time, the sister that moved to Australia did not do the makeup. And so the Australian sisters still don't do the makeup. So there's different sort of sister lines, but yeah, we have, I think at last count, there was about 2,500 nuns around the world in Scotland, France. There's a house in Uruguay.
Yes.
And it's all volunteer. It all
Grassroots.
yeah. It all comes together with people in a community that decide this is something that they want to do. Each house we all have a trademark here in the United States, but each house sort of decides what their main focus is going to be, how they want to interact with their community. Obviously, different communities have different needs.
Mm-hmm.
We dress differently. We've got different bowls you can see here.
Yes.
Yes, so you've got the Boston
Got
travel.
the Boston traveling bowl. It's more compact.
Right, right.
This is what we call the fruit bowl here in Portland.
Maybe the spirits are talking to us through the lights. We're just
it
gonna
was wonderful.
we're just gonna keep going. Let those spirits, they're feeling it. They're feeling it today.
But yeah, what I wanted to say was the first time I ever saw a sister was on YouTube. It was Sister Unity from LA. And my immediate thought was, who the hell is she and why is she such a loudmouth?
Oh,
Why is she screaming about marching in the streets? And this is probably less than a year after I had come out as an adult. So yes, I saw this video. One of my friends showed me, and I just thought, who is she? And I realized later that that was my own internal homophobia and my own reaction to seeing the makeup and the costume.
Mm-hmm.
And how that can happen for other people as well.
right.
But there was a little voice that kept saying, you could do that. You're out now.
Right.
You don't have to worry
It's
about.
always the case. The thing you most violently react to is actually something you're kind of into.
So at first you were like, what is this? And then you're like, wait a minute. this might be for me.
There was a little voice that kept saying, you could like help people. You went through a lot of trauma around your own coming out and religion, and you could help people hopefully avoid that. And also you would look fabulous in purple. So you should maybe try this.
So you saw a video and then you found the local chapter here?
So I was living in Utah at the time, but I had already started thinking about moving to either Seattle or Portland. And yeah, once I finally sort of decided to move to Portland, I had talked to a friend who had a friend who knew a person. I'd never been to Portland. I didn't have a job. I didn't have an apartment. It was just sort of like, I need to not be in Utah anymore. Once I decided I was going to move to Portland, I got online and found the chapter here. And I just thought, you know what? It's going to happen. I'm going to be a nun. Maybe not as soon as I get there, because it was more about finding a job in an apartment.
Right.
But I was so excited for my first sister event that I showed up a week early. I went to, it was Voice Box in Northwest. And I showed up and I'm here for the sister karaoke. And they went, that's next week.
Okay. You're like, oh, bless her heart.
Right.
Yes, bless her heart.
Right. So yeah, that was my sort of sister journey. And here we are. Was a victory.
Oh my gosh. I was trying to do drag in Boston. And I was like running around just finding any gigs. And I did a amateur night, and I was doing an amateur drag night, and out of the shadows comes one of the sisters, which is of course like, that's the face you want to see right after performing. She approached me. She was like, we're doing a benefit. We're doing donated performances. Would you like to join? We'd love to have you. I was like, of course. Yeah, I'm working for exposure. Like, I'm just, just starting out. Like, that's all I need. And so I went to the event. I also was early, weirdly enough, and was like 2-3 hours early, before the sisters came in. So I put on my face and I was ready 2 or 3 hours earlier than I needed to be. And they started setting up. So like a dutiful theater kid, I helped set up. Got to talk with them. While I was setting up with them, I got to hear about it. And of course, got to see them all come in. There were all these, bearded guys in caftans. And I'm like, that seems something resonates. Like,
Right.
I want to be into this. This is great. And it was for the same reasons. I was wanting to do drag, to do good for the community, and to use the platform to forward gender expansive thinking and just like more queer theory. And I'm glad to say that I've been able to do that for the last 5 years between Boston and Portland.
So you've been doing it for 5 years. How long have you been doing it?
I will be 10 years this year, actually, in October.
Wow. Well, I mean, I think that's remarkable. And, and that you are bringing in new members, as you said. So what is the process like when somebody wants to be a sister?
Well, so a quick plug, anybody can be a sister. We get questions all the time. Do you have to have a beard? Do you have to be a gay man? We are radically inclusive, LGBT, hetero, old, young, whatever your identity.
So a pasty white, straight East Texas girl could be a sister?
We have several bio-female sisters. And I remember years ago at Pride, there was this woman in the crowd that said, oh, that'd be fun, but I could never be it. I'm not a gay man, And I turned around and said, you can be a sister. And she just, and she was screaming, and she actually became a sister with us in Portland. So yeah, the process is about a year here in Portland. You start by coming to one of our meetings or contacting the Mistress of Novices. You spend about 3 months as an aspirant, which is somebody who comes to our events and sees what we do and really, decides, is this something for me? Show up in regular clothes.
What we're working with, and if you want to continue working with us. And then postulancy is when you start putting on the clown white. And you start looking like a nun, you got a veil.
So that's after a year?
That's after 3
months as an aspirant, and then you can request elevation to a postulant.
And then do you want to take novice?
So yeah, once you've done the minimum 3 months as a postulant and 6 events in face, and you're sort of learning how the sisters work. You're more in the background. There's an urban legend that as a junior member, you can't talk as a sister.
Oh, yeah.
Everybody thinks that.
And it's like, well, no, you just, you're there to learn and observe, and you shouldn't be representing the house as if you were a full sister.
Right.
But yeah, there's nothing against you talking about your own experiences or interacting with
We're not taking a vow of silence.
No,
Exactly. So yeah, once you've done the minimums as a postulant, then you can request elevation, and we have an interview for your novitiate or to become a novice, which is a minimum of 6 months and 9 events, one of which would be your novice project. So you are showing us what you've learned. You're showing us how you can support the house or the community. We've had sisters do self-defense classes for the sisters. My novice project was a national coming out day. People could tell their stories, and we actually had a couple people come out on stage for the first time.
Oh, my goodness.
Which is very powerful. My family surprised me by driving up from Utah to be there, and I think it was really good for them to hear some of those stories as well. One of our sisters did a masturbate-a-thon at one of the sex clubs. So it just, the novice project is about supporting the house or the community.
But it's also your chance to show the community who you are. It's your kind of coming.
Right.
What are you about? What is the sister going to be doing for the community?
What was your novice project?
My novice project, I was working with an English class that I had do interviews for successful strategies of positive, impactful social change, something along those lines. But they got to each do one-on-one interviews and write a profile up on each sister about the work that they do and how they impact.
Right.
Yeah. So teaching a new generation about what works, what doesn't.
Right. Well, and I think it's an ever-changing scope of, what works and what doesn't, because it depends on, in the 70s, they didn't have social media. There's been a lot more awareness built since then. Not
Things
that we don't still
changing
have.
so fast.
Yeah. I mean, I know that we still have such a long way to go, but I mean, that's why what you're doing is so important, because it is still blazing that trail forward. I do feel like we're going to get to a place, and I don't know when that's going to happen, but where people can walk the streets feeling comfortable who they are.
Fingers crossed.
It has to happen. Eventually hate's going to die out. I mean, as the generations learn more and they see more, my family will hate that I talked about this, but they're not listening anyway. My grandfather was a prominent member of the KKK. Like prominent, and I mean, this was my grandpa that I knew. And then, but my dad knew he didn't want to be like his dad. And when I even learned things I didn't want to take from my dad, who I loved very much, but, had a long way to go too. And then I'm teaching my children, who are adults now, love and support. And she will go to drag story time and, and all of these things. And we have to keep fighting. And hopefully one day that hate will die out.
Because love will win.
Yeah.
That's why.
Well, when you know better, you do better.
Yeah.
Yeah, as long as, and something we talked about earlier, I think having some of those harder experiences or realizing some of the things in the world that aren't quite right and choosing to do something better or choosing to work to make it a better place instead of, I think people have hard experiences sometimes and they go the opposite direction. And it's like, well, I had to suffer, I'll just get mine and everybody else can fuck off.
Right.
And that's sort of the place, as long as everybody's trying to make that decision around, I don't want other people to have to suffer the way I did, or I don't want other people to go through the same things. And so I'm going to try and fix things wherever I can.
Yeah. The whole concept of, well, we had to have it hard, so you need to have it hard is the stupidest concept ever.
Right. So,
no, we had to have it hard and it was hard and it shouldn't have to be this hard.
Yeah.
And let's find ways to make it easier, because then we can put our energy into other things instead of fighting the hard.
Yeah. And it's like, I want to flip that back on people and just say, you shouldn't have had to deal with what you
Right.
dealt with either. Like, let me give you a hug, because I think so much of that is it has to be that way, or they have to come to terms with the idea that something was wrong for them.
Right.
Yeah.
Their suffering was,
Yeah.
that they suffered, and
they didn't have to.
yeah, right. And some people just can't.
It's a
Take
hard thing to
that.
get over. It's a hard thing for us to get over. I mean,
Right. And that whole concept of you got to build character. There's so many ways to build character. You can build character by supporting each other, by lifting each other up, by giving a hand to somebody who needs it. There's a lot of ways to build character that doesn't take, you've got to suffer.
Exactly.
and that goes for in community as well.
I
I think one of the things we do as sisters is offer an alternate drag performance where it's not as focused on like the social understanding of like what a female is and what a woman does
Right.
to present or perform. We're showing the sort of like, what if that's the maiden, we're maybe like the crone or the mother, where there's a more nurturing aspect, or there is a way to go out in community and use drag as a way to lift people up, not just shame, read, not tear people down.
Right.
And that was one of the things that I most noted about the sisters when I joined was, and that's what kept me with it, is like, this is, there's a lot of ways to do drag and they're all valid.
Right.
This is one of them. This is a way that you can actually intentionally go out into community and make people feel better about themselves.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, how do you choose the look? Because both of your looks are very different.
I love getting this question.
I bet you get it all the time.
Yeah. So each sister sort of develops over time, depending on what their ministry is, how they want to be, what they feel like looks good for their face.
Right.
I've always been of the opinion any person starting as a sister, the makeup is meant to enhance what you have or hide what you don't. And, that's up to you. That's, if you have a beauty mark here, if you have a nose that you feel like is too big, like accentuate it, like make it bigger, like make it, really give yourself some love for the features that you have.
If your hands are too big, just get a small one.
Get a small one. If your hands are not green enough,
Get them. Get some green hands.
Get some green gloves. So how did you get Donna? How does Donna's look?
Well, I think I just experimentation, and a lot of people say, oh, I can't do makeup, so I couldn't be a sister. And again, anybody can be a sister, because it's not about the look. It's the look is a tool, and we will help you learn that.
Right.
And also, if you're focused more on the look than you are doing the work in the community,
then this is not for you.
Yeah, you've sort of flipped that balance. We always talk about the calling. Do you hear the call to community service? And is that what's driving you? Or is it more about the look? Is it because you want to be out in drag and have people tell you how wonderful and pretty you are, which is completely valid.
Right.
And not what the sisters are about, because if you are out there drawing energy from the community, you're not giving it back to the community as much as you could be.
Right.
So yeah, when I first started, actually, I would paint my face white, and then I would try half a thing on this thing, on this side, and half a thing. And I had stencils, and I had jewels, and just also, it was like, oh my God, some of my first faces were not my favorite. Let's just put it that way.
But you were meticulous. You were like a tool sister. Like you liked your face.
I used to like use a card and tape and all the things, but I think it just comes over time with different sisters saying, oh, I like this piece, or I like that piece. And actually my mother within the sisters stole the line from my eye, because
there's a lot of stealing that goes on.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, you can have that piece. That's fine. But it's just over time, you get to know what feels good on your face, and with input from other people saying, oh, maybe try, set that line at an angle and see how that feels, or a different color. And
you don't have to look like Raven or RuPaul or like a glam queen.
Right.
My mother's always telling me less is more. I don't know why she's telling me this.
No.
More is more.
More is always more.
Can you tone it down a little?
But I've connected it to my ministry too, where in my personal life, I always felt not just like an outcast, but monster, and was afraid of like impacts on other people in that way. And so it's been a reclamation of what I felt like I was projecting. I felt like I was how it was existing. Also the fact that, I love monsters and I love.
Right. You said that you used to work in haunted houses and stuff.
Creepy. Yeah. Haunted houses are my favorite. Like they're great. Like I love Halloween. Like that's a great time. That's when I come alive. And yeah, just sort of keeping that on my face reminds folks like, yeah, I might be spooky and I might be a little odd looking, but like I'm usually smiling and happy and like pretty good along.
I definitely didn't get any kind of scary vibe from you.
Like, just come say hi.
Yeah. Very energetic, very fun.
Right. So yeah, I like messing with people's perceptions that way. I think that's why I liked drag in the first place.
Yeah.
Well, I love the idea that we can walk into a place and people have to deal with us.
Oh.
I love, because for so long growing up, there was for me that, and a lot of LGBT people, that feeling that I have to be small, I have to hide myself, I can't let anybody know I'm here, don't look at me, because if you look at me, you might figure out I'm gay, and now I just go, okay, where are we going to go? We might go to a drag show and then it's like, what's close? Is there a restaurant? Is there another bar? Is there somewhere else we can go? And I just love to sweep into a place.
I could really use a hot dog.
Right. Take up space and go, okay, we're here now. And guess what? We're valid. We might look crazy, but we get to exist in the world just as much as anybody else does. And sort of going back to the whole office thing, it's the same thing. It's like if my coworkers all talk about their husbands and wives and their dogs and their kids and carpool to school for the kids, it's like, I'm going to talk about, we raised $2,500 this weekend at a drag show. And here's a picture because I looked fucking great.
Right.
And, we get to take up that space and
because
everybody
you are valid.
Right.
You are a living, breathing human being. You are valid. Your experiences are valid. Your time off is valid.
Right.
I'd much rather listen to what you're doing than what somebody else, who's carpooling and stuff's doing.
Yeah. Well, yeah. And it's like, that is their life, and they get to be comfortable in that. And there is no reason why everybody else, no matter what you're doing, whatever your weird is,
right,
why you can't be comfortable in that too, even if somebody else is like, I don't get it.
When you said, you grew up wanting to be small, I feel that because I, all the way through till about probably 9th grade, I wanted to be invisible. Like, please just make me invisible. Please, I don't want anybody to look at me. I don't want anybody to talk to me. I was a very quiet, kind of shy person. Nobody who knows me now would believe that, but it really was. And then I got into theater, and probably the first play I was in, I was like girl number 2 or whatever. But then my director, he gave me one line and he gave my character a name.
Wow.
And that changed everything, and I had gotten into theater because I thought it was going to be easy. And then I was like, oh God, you have to get on stage and have to do stuff. Oh my God. Like, for the person who wanted to be invisible, this is probably not where you want to be. But once he did that, it was like it opened up something inside of me. And oh my God, if I could be on stage.
Well, because then it's your choice to be perceived. It's your choice, and you get to be what you want other people to see.
Right.
And when you can do that as a player on stage, that's one thing. And when you can feed that back into your own life and be exactly who you want to be unapologetically,
right,
that is so powerful.
That's why doing those storytelling events has been so cool. I love public speaking. I'm one of those weird people who love public speaking. You give me a crowd, give me 100,000 people. Let me do it.
Well, if you get to wear a mask the entire time, it's even easier.
I can't even imagine if you get to just be because I'm going like this. Yeah. I can't even imagine how much more free that is that if you went really made up.
Yeah.
Well, see, I would say you are a step ahead of me, at least, because Donna can get up on a stage and do a thing and feel great. And John can do it when he needs to, but
Right.
John would much rather not. So you being able to do it just as you are is definitely a step ahead.
I love it, but
But in that first role that you got, like that's your first mask, that feeling. Of
Oh,
like,
yeah.
yeah, this is why I'm doing this.
Well,
This is
and-
why
He made me feel seen,
yeah.
you know, and that was, I can't even imagine how different my life would be if I hadn't done that. The things that I've done, the things that I've had the courage to do and be outspoken and stuff where, I mean, I would have still been that quiet, hidden girl if it hadn't been for that experience. And I think we all need that experience, something that shows us, you know, you're okay. You're okay. It's okay if you take space. It's okay if you,
Taking up
Yeah.
space.
you are valuable. You're important. I want our young people to know that and see that and feel that. I want our old people who have always been afraid of that to see that. You know, because these conversations are so important and they may not ever have this conversation with you. You know, and it's so amazing to be able to sit down and to be able to talk about these things and really humanize. Because I think that's the problem is people don't humanize.
There's a whole other person.
Yeah, it's
behind these words.
guess what? They get up with stinky breath and, you know, and they got to brush their teeth
And
and
they get
eat their
stuck in traffic
breakfast.
too, yeah.
Oh, they
Yeah.
get out of my way.
Yeah.
You know, you just do it like that, and people are like, "What's going on?" But
And
yeah,
in that way that like everybody else is, you know, has their own story to tell. We're just a reflection of the community as well.
Yeah.
Like, we are all connected in that way.
well, I think it's powerful. I think
Absolutely.
it's incredible, and I love the vision that you guys have and the message that you have and the availability that you have.
Yeah.
I think that is incredible. And it's not just for LGBTQ. It's not just for drag. I mean, it's for all of us to feel that we should be okay in our skin.
Absolutely. We always, our main mission is the promulgation of joy and the expiation of guilt. We want to let everybody know they can be happy, they are loved just as they are, and expiating that guilt, getting rid of anything else that religion, society, family, a lot of times,
So many
whatever
times.
that guilt is that is put on you, that's not yours.
Right.
It's okay to set it down. So, yeah.
And
that
also
is-
affirm yourself, like feel affirmed.
Yeah.
Especially, you know, people who are trying to take rights away, people who are maybe in, you know, Tennessee
yeah.
doing some messed up things.
Florida and
Yeah, just affirm yourself. And honestly, that will probably take most of your day. You have the rest of the time to, you know, try and get other people's rights taken away.
right.
And
Yeah.
that's, well, also it's great. Like, you can feel good about yourself. You can.
I don't know how people have the energy to hate.
Yeah. When you can spend it on so many better things.
I feel my day with so many other things.
Right.
I would not even
Have
have
they
the
not
time.
seen TikTok? Have
Oh
they
my
not-
God. You know, there is a TikTok for
Go
everything.
finish a Pokedex. Like, that takes forever.
What's a Pokedex?
A Pokemon.
Oh,
Well, I think something you said earlier about, you know, the hate is just because that's the thing that they're afraid
That's
to
the
try,
shit, yeah,
or
that's-
that's the thing that they worry about in themselves. And, you know,
Right.
again, studies they've done show that the people that are the most homophobic are more likely to have sexual tendencies. But yeah, it's like, it's that fear.
Yeah.
Hate so often is like, I'm afraid to try that because it might feel good, or I might fail, or I
Right.
might whatever. And so then you have to turn it back around on other people as, you know, taking their rights away or.
my first ex-husband. So I have 2 children with him, and our son, when he was a year old, like 1 year old, I'd watch Grease with him, right? Talk about musicals, talk about, you know,
Okay.
and my son loved it. He would dance. He would just dance and he was having so much fun. And my ex-husband thought I was going to turn him gay so bad from watching Grease. I'm like,
It's just like the straightest music.
do you know what Grease is about?
Right? Hello.
Grease is about getting some and cars. I mean, like
Cars flying.
that is a straight musical.
Yeah,
And it's so comical.
and yeah, it's still you've got that comedy thing aspect. There's usually a drag role of the principal.
Yeah.
In the stage production, at least. It's so funny that like even something like that still relies on defining the queer
Right.
to exist.
Right.
It's inescapable.
Yeah.
Well, and again, back to what we were talking about, the whole like, if you watch queer media, you're going to turn queer.
Oh, yeah.
Like you said, Grease is very hetero, like high school boys and girls going to get some.
Right.
And hello, that was one of my family's favorite movies.
Right. Mine too.
I watched it over
Mine
and over, and I
too.
still came out gay. So
Yeah, but you wanted to be Sandy. No, I wanted to be Sandy.
Oh, I
I
actually
would be
auditioned.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did Grease when I was 29,
Yes.
like days before I turned 30. I went full black wig.
Stalker Jenny.
I totally did. I didn't get the part, but I still, but I was still in it. And, I mean, just what a,
Are there worse things you could do?
there are worse things you could do.
Mhm.
Yes.
Oh my god, I love her so much.
I-
Just end this with a 3 rendition of that.
Well, so you guys do a lot in the community. What are some of the things that y'all have coming up?
Gosh, yeah, we should plug events.
We should. We're doing an Easter event, both at, I don't know if we have okay, so first of all, portlandsisters.org.
Mhm.
That's going to have,
And links to
Great.
everything is going to be
Awesome.
in the videos and stuff. So
We have a
we're going to have,
calendar. You can come see us.
right.
We're doing an event with the Eagle, I believe, on the Easter.
Well, so we have an Easter park crawl type thing where we're going to hand out Easter candy, eggs, and that kind of thing. Also, later that night, we have a much more adult Easter baskets. We're doing a jockstrap auction at the Eagle.
well, sure. That's
Well,
what I think of.
Jesus.
What I think of.
For Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, when I think of Easter, I'm like Easter eggs, Easter bunny, Easter
Yeah.
jockstrap.
Yes, there are a specific kind of eggs, huevos, if you will. We have some things in the works for both June and July because Portland Pride moved from June to July this year.
Hey.
So it's going to be sort of a double
Hotter.
pride.
It's hotter.
We also have something that I think we're not quite ready to announce yet, but it is going to be
Check our socials
Mhm.
and the
Right.
I'm
also
following
very
you
excited
already,
for
so
this
wow.
in July if we can bring it all together.
What's like a event coming up?
Now-
Scandals, block
Bingo?
parties, bingo. Yes, bingo 4, 5. We've been doing more and more bingos.
Yeah.
So I believe y'all were a part of a little short film.
Oh, we were. Yes.
So a few weeks ago, I interviewed the
Mhm.
Portland Sleigh Stack,
Mhm.
Brent, and we were supposed to have already had the
Yes, the damn snow.
the stupid snow ruined the red carpet event. The
Sleigh
short,
Stack's Big Adventure.
yes, and I was so looking forward to that.
Mhm.
And y'all have a part in that, don't you?
Yeah, there were 5 or 6 sisters that were there that day during filming, and one of them actually has a pretty big part. One of our founding sisters sort of came out of retirement for the day, so yeah, we were very excited for the premiere too, and very sad that it got.
Well, they're working on it. I know they're working on rescheduling,
Mhm.
and I am there for that
Mhm.
because it is some of Portland's best weirds.
It
Yes.
was so much fun being there, seeing all of the weirdos and what everybody brings to the table. And there were llamas, which I love me some llamas. It was a lot of fun. A llama?
No,
He's supposed to be dead.
well, I will be there for that because that just seems like such a freaking blast.
Yeah. Brent's been doing a lot of good work bringing the weirdos together.
Well, and I know that he has other ideas that he
Mhm.
wants to do, and that'll be a lot of fun. And I can't wait to see, more of the weirds.
I was just that sparked, are you part of the Weird Portland Society?
I'm not part of it. I follow it, but I'd like to
Okay.
actually be a part of it.
So yeah, the Unipiper
Right.
is actually one of the ones that started it, or the one.
I'm interviewing him in a couple of weeks.
Oh, nice.
Fabulous.
Yes,
Yeah.
I'm
Beautiful.
I've got the Una, the mermaid coming up.
Yes.
I've got, so so many. And I don't think I'll ever run out. That's what's
Oh,
great
not
about
right.
Portland. I'm not going to run out. They just keep,
Yep.
and I'm not keeping it to Portland. I've got others that I'm doing as well, but I have so many here.
And the more we can encourage that, both here and abroad.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah. That's why I don't want it to just be just Portland, because people need to know that weird is all around them. It's everywhere.
It is, and it's such a hard thing because the weirdos, the LGBT people that are different tend to congregate in the cities.
Right.
And a lot of
Especially
times
the
it's
cities
like-
that accept them.
Right. And a lot of times it's like the smaller towns need that too,
Oh, so
but
bad.
it's so much harder to be yourself and be, I was used to say, like, if you're anything but, Mormon and straight and ready to have a bunch of kids in Utah, then it's not the place for you.
It's not. You're not supposed to be there.
And so, yeah, it's hard because that sort of takes all of the flavor out of those smaller towns and all the weirdness and all the,
Right.
and yeah.
But for anybody who feels the weirdness in their heart, in the heart of hearts,
Not
keep taking those tiny steps, because
Yes.
that's what we had to do. And I definitely haven't looked back. That's
Absolutely.
Well, and I mean, this has been such a cool experience for me to get to talk to all of these people, because there are overlaps. I mean, there's not been a single video where I haven't had an overlap from a different video. Every single one of them.
that's
And it's been different every time. Utah has been one.
Mhm.
So that's been really interesting, and I mean, there's just so many little things that we don't know how we're all connected,
Mhm.
but we are. And I think that that's another lesson that we need to learn, is that, you probably know somebody who's weird. It might be in your own household. You don't
the
know.
weird is not a 4-letter
It's
word.
not. It's 5 letters. So
And
it's
you're never going to find the weirdos if you don't let your own freak flag
That's
fly.
true.
Right,
That's
right.
how we find each other.
And welcome it.
Absolutely.
I'm collecting. I am collecting weird friends now. This is my goal. I'm just gonna, because it's where I feel more comfortable.
Yes.
So
Surround yourself with people that you
Like
can be
minded.
yourself with.
Right.
And,
no, it's awesome. So we're gonna put up your calendar,
yeah.
all your events.
Oh, March, our Novice project on March 18th.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, that was the one thing I was like, I know there's
March
something.
18th, to
Yes.
do like a St. Patty's.
It's called Lucky Load. It's a high-vis construction, St. Patrick's Day, sexy. We've been doing a lot of sexy stuff lately.
Well, I mean, look at you.
So yeah, sorry, that just sparked again. I
No,
was like,
no.
we do have a thing.
You have a thing. You have lots of things.
Yes.
You guys are doing lots of wonderful things for the
We
community.
had 7 events last month. That's coming up. We're raising money with the Moda Center, and so bringing that money into the community.
Mhm.
And we're trying to make sure we're out there, spreading love and encouraging whatever anybody's into, including sex.
And yeah, absolutely. And I'll say it again, we're always looking for another good nun.
Yes.
So
Right.
if you feel that calling to community service,
Can somebody come just check out a meeting, if they're just curious
Yeah,
and they
we're
want to
open
see?
to the public.
Yeah, it's almost like that's
Yeah,
VIP.
we've been meeting at Hollywood Library.
Okay.
Yes.
They have a meeting room. It's always the 4th Sunday of the month. And they are open to the public. So
Very cool. Very
Come check
cool.
out what we're working on. Join
Yes.
us.
Oh, I think that's awesome.
Mhm.
I mean, I had no idea that, that anybody could join. That's
Yeah,
a
yeah.
good information today. So
Absolutely.
very cool. Well, this has been very fun. It worked out, other than my coughing fits at work in our scary light,
My
for
friend.
spirit that was talking to us. This worked out, having both of you here. I think it was wonderful.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you so much for having us.
Absolutely. So, all right. Well,
So to heat up your space.
this is always hot in here, no matter what. So.
I can imagine.
Well, perfect. Thank you both so much.
Yes, thank you.
Can you imagine making yourself outlandish and bigger than life just to make sure others feel comfortable in their own skin? That encapsulates more than anything what I feel the weird community does. They open the door and give permission for you to be yourself, whatever that looks like. I loved this interview so much. Thanks to Sister Donna and Sister Inda Beginning for their openness and their commitment to support their community. You can follow them in the links below. Also, special thanks to Christine Lassiter with Two Rivers Mortgage. You know how to get in touch with me for mortgages in Oregon and Washington. And be sure to like, subscribe, and share this podcast so others can see how I'm finding my own weird.